everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of tnSportsChat. I'm Patrick Matsinko, and you might remember this guy. Long time no see. Justin Carlucci joining me for a very special edition. This will be our season preview. It's here. This is the start of the high school football season. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I can't believe it's here already, man. That offseason went in the blink of an eye. So the last season was a distant memory, and a couple games just stand out in your mind. And a lot of seniors have moved on and graduated, but there's a lot of great talent left in our time news coverage area: Colonial League, Schuylkill League, EPC. We're 1 week away from kickoff. I can't believe it, Pat.
August 24th. It's kind of a date that we've had circled on the proverbial calendar for a little while. It's a very early start to the season this year. We'll have 2 games in by the end of August. We'll have 6 games in by the end of September, which obviously means that the playoffs and the end of the season will be here sooner than ever, really.
Right.
But thinking back to last year, obviously we had a Lehigh team that, again, coming into the season, maybe didn't know a lot of unknowns. Coming in, not sure what to expect, but Indians ran the table, undefeated regular season. A couple of close games, obviously along the way, but made it to a District 11 Class 3A championship game against a really, really stout Palisades team that played pretty much lockdown defense the entire season, but Lehigh was able to score points, and that district title game was close, back and forth. Cody Shearer, Taquan Bradley Chambers, those were some of their stars throughout the season, and those guys showed up huge last year in that game. Obviously, Taquan Bradley Chambers, gone. Cody Shearer, gone. Indians are going to have big shoes to fill coming into this season, but Tom McCarroll has been able to get these guys ready, seems like every single year.
Patrick, that was a special team, and I think some of that energy is going to trickle over to some of the underclassmen that are now going to have to step up for Tom McCarroll and that team. You look at Taquan Bradley Chambers, and in my, 6.5 years I've been here, that was probably one of the top 5 best rushing seasons that I've ever witnessed. He was a special player, as was Cody Shearer. You look at a warrior on both sides of the ball, Cody Shearer. If he, amazing offensive upside, and if he'd make a turnover, he'd make it back up on defense, which is exactly what he did in that championship game against Palisades. You can't ever count Lehigh out. Last season, that was the name of the game. That championship game, as soon as it looks like Palisades was going to slam the door, Lehigh clawed their way back, and that's the memory that I have engraved in my brain. And that's the exact kind of football that Coach McCarroll and that staff kind of preaches. Since we're on that subject, he's going to be without one of his assistant coaches this year. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Matt Kashulik, obviously a guy who's kind of manned, a lot of the defensive responsibilities for the Indians on Tom McCarroll's staff. He gets a huge opportunity this season at Pleasant Valley. Now, Pleasant Valley is a program that's had, Jim Terwilliger, Dave Pacchioni, Mark Versick.
Yeah.
Those were all guys that also, though, were within the system. And now you get a guy like a Matt Kashulik, comes from a different kind of background. He hasn't been an assistant there. He hasn't been on anybody's staff. So I think he's going to bring them a very different look. The Bears are going to have a different feel this season. A lot to replace, obviously. Brandon Keys, we had huge expectations for coming into last season after he had a record-breaking junior year. He got hurt midway through the year, but Aiden McHugh still kind of lit up the stat sheet in only half a season. He's gone this year, so they're going to have to find a quarterback, and they're going to have to also replace several playmakers, including Michael Brown, who was our wide receiver of the year and had really a remarkable year. I know he played through an injury. The Bears had some struggles last year, but they had a ton of talent, and now Matt Kashulik's definitely going to be looking to kind of fill those shoes and replace those guys. Maybe they'll take some lumps early in the season, but kind of try to find their footing midway, and then obviously for the second half of the year.
So. Right. And just going back to Lehigh, a team that's going to have to find some leadership quickly. I think I just counted 9 seniors that they have, give or take. I might have missed 1 or 2 on this roster, and you're going to have some guys obviously have to step up in some important skill positions. So I'm assuming we're going to see Chris Whiteman at quarterback this year.
Who was our defensive, he was our defensive back of the year last year, played in a lot of big games on defense. I know Tom McCarroll touted him as just a hard worker, high football IQ, a kid that has been in the program, again, obviously taken a lot of significant snaps, and is going to be, I think, maybe able to surprise some people.
Yeah.
I know, last year maybe Lehigh not only, surprised me, they kind of shocked some people, and I don't know, I think maybe this Indians team has a chance to do that again with Chris Whiteman at the helm. So
yeah, and you got Zach Crum coming back, who made some incredible plays on both sides of the football,
playmaker.
Especially in the secondary, he's going to be paired alongside with Chris Whiteman on the other side. So the Indians have a nice secondary, that's for sure. And, you're talking about Pleasant Valley. I guess we can just jump over there. And, Lehigh, an explosive offensive team the last couple of years. You go back a couple of years when they had Wyatt Clements and
Tyler Cann. And
they averaged 450 yards of offense last year. So I'm really intrigued to see if we see new head coach Matt Koschulik take some of these, I guess, Tom McCarroll principles and Lehigh philosophies over to Pleasant Valley, who is known to be an offensive powerhouse themselves the last couple of years, and you need to score points to contend in the EPC.
And that's the thing. Even in the last couple of years, whether it's under Dave Pacchione, Jim Terwilliger, Mark Versick, Pleasant Valley has always seemed to have been able to put up those points, but all those games they're almost always shootouts. You know what I mean? It's a 40 to 30 type game, and I know that probably better than anybody because I have to cover a lot of them. So they're late to end, and they kind of go on for a while, but it's just a back and forth. But it's fun. It's just a different brand, a different style of football from the Schuylkill League or even a lot of maybe what you see with a lot of Colonial League teams. It's just a very different brand and style of football that they play in the EPC. So, but defense wins championships. And thinking about defense,
maybe
look at Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe's a team that has had a stellar defense, obviously kind of to hallmark for that program with the Red Swarm. And they lived up to the billing last year, 10-2, only lost to Lehigh twice, led the area in defense, led the area in takeaways. This is a team that hangs a hat on a physical style of defense. Maybe some teams play a little more finesse. The Olympians, they like to crack you, they like to come out and they like to put a helmet, hat on a hat, they like to come out, have 11 guys fly into the ball, and that's the kind of style that Mark Rosenberger and his staff love. They love to see the kids play, and the kids embrace it. I talked to Dylan Daly, I talked to Ethan Mordaunt, Austin Williams, Will Munson, Colin Jacobs, all these kids, they love it. They love playing defense before offense, and I think this is something that it just fits with what that program does, and that's just how they play, and they thrive playing that style of football.
Yeah, you look at a team whose blueprint is think fast and react. That's the Red Swarm defense, and that's how they play for as long as I can remember. And that defense was something special last year. I specifically remember covering the Blue Mountain game last year, and the way they just handled Blue Mountain was a statement. That was a statement game. And also on the same token, you look at the 4 times news leading rushers from last season, they're all gone. Taquan Chambers, Cody Scher, Justin St. Hill of Jim Thorpe, and Nick Briner, who's coming back for like his 17th year of football, I feel like, Nick, so he's finally
It's
seen
crazy.
Him. Right.
Yeah, and he's been so huge for that Tamaqua team, and you think about all the guys that they have in addition to Nick Briner. You have Braden Knobloch at quarterback. He split time last year with Thad Zuber in that system that they had with head coach Sam Bonner. He's back. Then you have, obviously, Nate Boyle. And then you have, Jake Barron. You have Matt Kistler.
Oh, yeah.
They lose Casey Rother, who was a big receiving threat for them. But, they are loaded. And then you think about the line.
You got both sides of the ball.
Amadea, this is a team that looks like it's got all the pieces in place to take that next step up. I know qualified for districts last year, lost to Jim Thorpe, but if there's a team that you're looking for that's kind of, I don't want to say the sexy pick, but you look at the guys that they have back in all these different skill positions, Tamaqua looks as well positioned as anybody to take another step forward this season. And the other thing too with Lehigh goes up to 4A this year, which, you still have to play the games and all of that, but obviously Lehigh going out of 3A, certainly it's going to change some things once we hit the postseason. So But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what Tamaqua does this year.
Talk about making the next step and just kind of bouncing back to Jim Thorpe. You look at the next two leading rushers in the Times News area in terms of yardage is Seth Pollock and C.J. Selby of Jim Thorpe's. Selby didn't even crack 100 carries. And he was top 10 in the Times News area in rushing. He had averaged almost 7.5 yards a carry. So I'm really excited to see C.J. Selby carry the football.
Yeah. And then the other guy that too, with thinking about Jim Thorpe, on both sides of the ball, Nate Roshak is back. Obviously, they lose, like you said, Justin St. Hill and Nick Roshak at quarterback, and Lucas Boyle, who was their center. So it's kind of like the whole middle of that offense is gone. But Nate Roshak is back, and Kendall Herron as well. They have a bunch of guys there that look like they're going to be kind of moving into some different roles this year, maybe increased roles, I guess. And so it should be interesting, just to kind of think about what they're capable of with these guys back, and you don't really know until the games get going. But you think, kind of coming off of last year, like you said, with C.J. Selby, you saw what he did with a small sample size. Now let's kind of see what he does when he takes on, an even bigger role this year.
You talk about a bell cow running back, if you will, the term you hear in fantasy football, but only 2 Times News players cracked 200 carries last year, and in fact it was by a wide margin. Taquan Bradley Chambers and St. Hill both had 240 plus carries. No other Times News rusher even had 200 carries. So big difference, and Selby's going to have some big shoes to fill, and I'm curious to see who else we're going to see in that backfield there. And like you said, Tamaqua, the skill players, and Nate Boyle, you talk to Coach Sam Bonner, anybody on that staff, and he plays all 3 phases. He plays special teams as hard as he plays offense and defense. Kid has such quick feet.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So I'm really, like you said, looking for them to take the next step. And with Tamaqua, they're only +2 in the plus-minus turnover margin, so they got to take care of the football.
Interesting. Yeah, just kind of looking at that the other day and didn't realize Jim Thorpe was +16, I believe.
That won you a lot of ball games, man.
No, that's crazy. You look at even the gap from first to second in turnover margin just in the area. They fly to the ball, and obviously, we talked about that defense. Just that's such a huge positive in the turnover margin, and it obviously goes a long way toward winning football games and giving yourself a chance to win football games. Another team, thinking about Seth Pollock that you had mentioned, back for another year. What are your thoughts on Marion this season? You have quarterback Mason Miller back. He was lost week 2 last year against Jim Thorpe. A lot of guys had to shuffle around, moving to different positions. Keith McCall kind of came from a split-end wide receiver position, went under center, played quarterback, shifted a lot of guys around. They lose, Max Noelter, Zach Falls, who was an all-state football player. But now obviously you have guys back in kind of, I guess maybe more traditional spots for them where they're maybe more accustomed to playing.
That's a big thing. I had a chance to catch up with Coach Morgan's earlier in the week, putting together their football preview, and you hit a lot of things on the head right there. Keith McCall's going to go back to wide receiver, and I had a chance to talk to him throughout the offseason. He said, that's my wheelhouse, man. He's like, I'm a receiver. I've been a receiver my whole life. And Mason Miller's a kid who, Max Preps has him listed at 230, 240 pounds. He's a big kid who can throw the rock. Not only that, they got a transfer student in from Mahanoy area named Dakota Streisel. So, and he's going to play some quarterback as well. And Coach Morgan said it might not be like a Tamaqua, Knobloch Zuber situation like last year, but Dakota Streisel is a kid that brings another dynamic to that team, and maybe almost to the effect of maybe a wildcat rusher. So I think you can be creative and do some really fun things in the backfield with a kid like that, and Seth Pollock, who also feels like he's been playing varsity for 15 years.
Not gonna lie, I was a little bit surprised to see him back on the roster. Every now and then it feels like you've been covering guys for a couple of years, and I know obviously head coach Pat Morgans and that whole staff is super excited to have him back in the backfield. And it's just kind of like a safety blanket, a security blanket, to have a guy that's that experienced and talented, obviously.
Right, and not only that, but Coach Morgan steps in trying to fill the shoes of Coach Stan DeCassi. If anybody could, that's tough right there to do, to say the least.
Yeah.
But he tries to set up his whole system in a short off season, and like you said, early in the season, you lose your quarterback, and then domino effects. You have different players playing out of position, and as we talked about before, when you learn, even if it's a slightly new position at that level, you can't play as faster. So here we are.
Exactly.
Here we are in year 2, and Coach Morgan's has all the dominoes, knock on wood, where they should be for the time being, and another whole offseason to get everybody on the same page. So I'm definitely looking for an improved Marion team, and we could talk about week 1 and some matchups when we get through the rest of our teams here.
And again, just some of these teams you think about, a Marion also that did qualify for districts last year, which again, they were sub 500, but they were able to get into the postseason. And other teams too. You look at a Palmerton. I mean, that's a Palmerton team that's been in a district championship game 2 years in a row against Schuylkill Haven, which has established itself with some of those guys as really, I think, one of the best teams in the state. And I know Mark Rosenberger mentioned, obviously it's a tall order to have to open up a season against Schuylkill Haven like they have to do next Friday night. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, just to be able for Palmerton and again, you lose a Garrett Pershey, Tacoa Gatus comes in. You lose a Mike Stasko. You have Sable, you have Aaron Stasko, you have so many of these guys, Cody Waterhouse, Mike Eckhart, Luke Yandel last year came in at the end of the year and played a significant role. Some of these guys, you lose Jared Mooney, and they've had these guys come in and just fill these roles so well to keep them playing at such a high level.
So Tacoa Gatus, who bounced around from Colorado to Northern Lehigh to Palmerton, one of the most dynamic quarterbacks we've seen in the last couple of years. So who's going to step it up now for Palmerton is the question.
And I think it's an open competition right now where you have a couple of guys, head coach Chris Wakowiak, they're looking at a couple of guys, and he's kind of playing that one, he's not really maybe showing that hand yet. We'll see come Friday night in the opener against Palisades. They have a really tough schedule to open the season, but now it's a matter of who fills those shoes. You don't fill one person maybe really can't fill those shoes, because what Tacoa Gatus did last year was remarkable. I mean, you don't just, even to think about losing a Garrett Pershey who was so big, and then you have Gatus come in, did maybe even more than anybody could have expected.
Two things. One, I think you're going to see a lot of Nelson this year. All over the field for the Palmerton Blue
Jordan
Bombers.
Nelson, huge. I mean, obviously coming off of a great track season, super talented. He could be, I think, maybe a bit of an X factor for the Bombers this year.
And two, this killed Palmerton in the district championship game against Schuylkill Haven. Turnovers. Palmerton had such a great season, and they were -7, which is good for second worst in the Times News area. So, honestly, you take care of the football, which is, you talk to anybody in the area, in the game of high school football across the country. It sounds dumb, it sounds cliche, but whoever takes care of the football the best, you want to be in that position when the game's on the line in the fourth quarter.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're giving the ball away, it's just, you're digging that hole that much deeper. And it's just, you're only making it harder to come back. And especially when you're playing a team like a Haven in a district championship game that runs the ball. They can chew the clock. They can keep the other offense off the field. So the more chances you give them, it's just the harder that you make it for yourself.
But I love the program that Chris Wakowiak runs over there. A little bit of momentum last year when they opened up the brand new field and everything, which kind of brought everybody together. So you look at a team that has a next man up attitude, like you said, from the Pershews to the Gatus to the so on and so forth. It doesn't matter. Everybody there seems to put the helmet on and play their part. And I think expectations should be high for Palmerton this year.
And you think about the Colonial League, and you have your Palisades, your Notre Dames, your Southern Lehighs, your Saucon Valleys, but then don't forget about Palmerton and Northwestern. Where you have Josh Snyder, who's done a really incredible job with that program, and you have Devin Ballinger. We talk about guys that feel like they've kind of been around for a few years.
Absolutely.
But he's been huge playing quarterback for the Tigers for the last 2 years. They lose some playmakers, but that's a team that is going to be ready to go once the season starts. He's now entering year 3 as starting quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see what Northwestern can do this year in the Colonial League. They battled some injuries last year. They had some guys that missed some time early on, kind of got them back in the second half of the year later on. And seem to be clicking a little bit, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out for Northwestern this season.
Ballinger, 4th in the Times News area in passing yards last year. And I think in Northwestern the last couple of years, and they lost some pieces with Caleb Clymer.
Oh, which, I mean,
players like that.
Huge, and on both sides of the ball.
On both sides of the ball. But I just think in Northwestern, and you say, how can you describe a football team, and how you describe, what Josh Snyder does there with that club, and they just grind. Doesn't matter who they play. They're always sneaky. They're always in there. I mean, on years like last year, they could be sneaky. For example, they're a tough out.
Oh my God!
Any Friday, any Saturday, it doesn't matter. So, like you said, Devin Ballinger, a nice pocket passer, big kid. He's got to feel pretty good going into the season with a kid like that behind center and all that experience in this system.
And I feel like, just thinking about how we do like grid picks every week. No matter who you see Northwestern playing, you always have that sort of.
Yeah, every
week.
It's
hard to pick against and say,
you can always make a case for that Josh Snyder football team.
Yeah,
day of the week.
And you think about that with just a well-coached team. They're always ready to go, and even if they do have some guys out for whatever reason, they lose some guys. You just expect that they're always going to be in it. They're going to have a chance to win. But yeah, and another team too is thinking about Joe Tout, Northern Lehigh.
Yeah.
Winless last season. They lose, thinking about a Mason Seiler who was so big for them, in the backfield. He did stuff on special teams for them as well. They lose him, but I think this is a team that, again, you think about just giving a team a chance to win a game. Joe Tout and that staff, they do that. Every week they have those kids prepared and in a position where they can win the game. I know last year 0-10 obviously isn't the type of season that you're hoping for, but it's certainly something that I always feel like with Joe Tout and what they do there with that program, they're going to give those kids a chance. They're going to have to have some shoes to fill, obviously coming back this year, but you just kind of always side with Joe Tout and what they're able to do with those kids.
They had a lot of games last year where they probably won 2.5, 3 quarters, but couldn't just play the complete
the Penn
game.
game. I'm thinking about where that was in the fourth quarter. Some of those games came down to the very end, and even some of the other games that maybe didn't come down to the very end, they were in it, and they had so many close games, and they just. The ball doesn't bounce their way, but
you look at taking care of the football. They're only they're 0-10. They're only -2 in the plus minus. I know I keep talking about plus minus, but it's really usually telling of how quality a football team is. In some cases it's not. I mean, look at Palmerton. They were able to turn the ball or make up so much ground because they could score at will. But Northern Lehigh, they took care of the ball, and that's important.
And the other thing too is look at penalties. Northern Lehigh was one of the least penalized teams last year. So again, you think about that discipline. That's I know something that we talked about throughout the season last year, where even if Northern Lehigh was struggling on the scoreboard, they were still doing those things right. Those are obviously huge for any football program. So
and they had some players who did some really nice things. Justin Paul, really nice running back, a lot of talent out of the backfield there.
Yeah, and I mean, you just think about thinking about a Mason Seiler who just did so much for them, and now again you're going to have guys that are going to kind of shift around. They're going to take on a bit of a different role. Maybe see more playing time. So we'll see, and we'll see. Just obviously how things how they're able to move some guys around, and you never know too. You get some guys in different positions. They kind of really excel. They thrive in different environments. So we'll see how things kind of play out this year for Northern Lehigh.
Last but not least, we got Panther Valley coming in. Times News, and Scott Price. Another year in the system for a lot of young players there. So, talk about what you think about the Panther Valley football team. Got Ethan Ray's likely behind center this year.
And I think what's going to be huge for him and for the program is just the playing time that he saw in the second half of last year, where he got in on, got a significant amount of playing time, saw a lot of action. Yeah. It's going to help him tremendously. And I know he said that, Scott Price said that. Just to not be coming in cold this year, and not to be kind of thrown into the fire. He knows it's his team, and I think he's maybe become a more vocal leader. He's really kind of taken the reins coming into this year, whether it's through off-season workouts, now and obviously coming in through preseason camps. I think he's ready for this role, and he's ready to be in this position. And I know Scott Price has really touted a lot of the work they've done in various 7-on-7 camps. That they're ready to go, and they're just kind of tweaking and refining some things. They're not installing anything. With these preseason camp weeks. It's just like, okay, these guys have been in the system. They know what's going on. They're ready to go. They're ready to see live game action, and now it's hopefully reap the benefits of all the work they've put in throughout the offseason and all the time that they've put in. So I think the staff and I think the players are ready to roll and ready for week 1.
And that's big. The faster you play, you're going to see the results on the scoreboard. And you look at Reedy Figueroa coming back, senior.
What a dynamo he is.
If he could put a full season together out there for the Panthers, kid's got all the talent in the world. They did lose a receiver, though, who transferred, I believe.
Yes, Derek Beckham. Now Jim Thorpe obviously was huge for Panther Valley, huge playmaker. Now he's going to be a huge asset for Jim Thorpe. Tough, obviously, anytime you lose a player of that skill and that caliber. But I think, though, that these guys at Panther Valley, they just seem like they've really embraced what Scott Price is doing, where the program is, and they're excited. I think that there's just a buzz. They're ready to bring it back. And I feel like, that they've just put that time in, and they're ready to roll,
But they did get 2 incoming transfers on the offensive line, which, Coach Price said that it should give them a little bit of a boost. Chris Hoover and Sean Hetrick will give them some depth and some experience up front there for the Panthers' offensive line.
And depth is so huge. We talked about that with Panther Valley. With Marion. We've talked about that with all of these teams. When you have a player go down, it doesn't matter if you're 6A, 1A, 2A. Anytime you lose a player, whether it's a skill player, a lineman, it doesn't matter. It can be crippling for any program. So any kind of added depth is massive for every team in the area.
And I was just going to point out, one of the last things here, Schuylkill League Media Day was recently, and the polls came out. I don't know if you guys talked about this recently, but Jim Thorpe, 10 first place votes for Division I in the media poll. And North Schuylkill was the first place winner for the coaches poll. However, Jim Thorpe, Tamaqua, and North Schuylkill are both top 3 in Division I in both polls. So, that's kind of what the media and the coaches are thinking.
And I know I talked to head coach Mark Rosenberger just a few days ago. Thinks North Schuylkill's loaded. That's obviously not a surprise to see North Schuylkill in that kind of position heading into the season. Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about Jim Thorpe. Obviously, it's a team in our area. We kind of know what they have coming back. We think there's certainly a lot of buzz, around the Olympians this season, and obviously it's justifiable, understandably so. With you look at the guys they have back, both sides of the ball, But again, look at last year. Lee Heighton picked last, media, coaches poll. And again, Indians run the table. Kind of shocked the world in a lot of ways.
I think the tribe used that as a little motivation, maybe hanging up in the locker room there throughout the course of the year.
Some nice bulletin board material. And I don't know that maybe they mind even being in that kind of position. Obviously, Tom McCarroll, that staff wants the program to get the respect it deserves, which obviously it certainly has earned with some really stellar play over throughout his tenure and over the last couple of years. But hey, if that's something that you can kind of turn in, make a negative a positive in some ways, then yeah, go ahead, plaster that all over the locker room and make it bulletin board material, and we'll see what happens, after 10 weeks of football. So,
you just look like the racing fan. You're here with your Penske racing hat and your Budweiser racing, classic racetrack white T-shirt, and I just know we got the best NASCAR beat guy. I don't want to go too off on a tangent, but
hey, it's a Friday. We're very, very casual Friday.
I'm overdressed today, man. Apparently, put on a polo shirt for the first time in my life. So
I just wanted to keep you on your toes. IndyCar is at Pocono this weekend, so
big weekend.
I'm just saying, if you have any, I don't know. If you don't have any plans, maybe you should go.
I have plans.
Oh, all right.
Plenty of plans.
I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm also just throwing it out there. If you have any vintage racing stuff that you'd like to send my way, I'm more than happy to wear it.
Or if anybody in the viewing area has any vintage racing gear, they can donate to Patrick Matsinko. pmatsinko@tnonline.com. He'd love to hear from you. Maybe he'll pick your shirt and wear it on the next episode.
Just saying.
You never know. But also, our Times News football preview tab is running next Monday and Tuesday, which would be, what's today's date? What is today's date?
Today, I believe, is the 17th.
No. Yeah, the 17th. So next
You're
week.
keeping me on my toes here. Now I have to figure out days.
Yeah, I'm good for something.
I mean,
Days and nights are tough here, when you're one of the people running the whole rodeo here. It's tough, man. I know the feeling.
Crazy.
Now I'm just one of the part-time guys.
You have no idea how disappointing that is to me.
But yeah, that comes out. And another thing I wanted to bring up is we're going to start doing some podcasts for the Times News. I'm going to do 2 podcasts every week. One's going to be general NFL talk, and the other one's going to be focused on fantasy football. I have a lot of experience in the fantasy football field. I know a lot of people in the industry. I'm going to have some good guests.
Your wheelhouse.
Patrick's hopefully going to jump on with me from time to time. So I'm looking forward to bringing some of that to the table, too. It's the least I could do for the Times News Sports
Which
Department.
I think is going to be pretty cool because there's always something going on. Like we talked about, none of those, I don't think any of those things are really going to overlap. You have so much fantasy content. You have so much just regular, general NFL, things to discuss. Obviously, with the way the Eagles season went last year, I'm sure people are jacked up for the year, even though the Patriots handed it to them last night. Which,
doesn't matter, man.
Just
preseason,
out there.
Now you talk about the tribe getting picked for the bottom of the coaches poll. What were the Vegas odds on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl last year? Not good. Before the season
with
started.
Nick Foles.
Nick Foles.
I mean,
Hey,
that guy. But we'll see. I mean, Nick suffered
minor injury. Might see Nate Sudfeld week 1. Don't hit the panic button yet.
Nate Studfield.
But we'll keep the NFL talk.
Yeah, they signed Hackenberg too, which,
Well, his first 2 throws in practice were picked off. So
it's a thing, though. I mean,
not the ideal start between that and
could be a camp arm.
not breaking the huddle right last year for the Jets.
Yeah,
Just
hey,
tough run.
You
Real
gotta you gotta start somewhere.
Keep grinding, man.
Yeah.
Listen, that's all I got for you for now, man. So, you got anything else for the listeners out there?
I think we're good. Thanks so much for joining us.
You got it.
Me on this very special edition of tnSportsChat, which 2 episodes this week. So that's we've hit our quota.
Hey, you know how to reach me. I'll be around every now and then.
Yeah, and you'll be doing more for us throughout the fall, hopefully, with a little more football stuff. I'm hoping.
Don't hold your breath.
Deep, yeah, right. But yeah, so we'll definitely have plenty more content coming your way in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, with everything getting underway, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time. So yeah, but that's all we have for right now. So for Justin Carlucci, I'm Patrick Matsinko. Thank you very much for tuning in to tnSportsChat presented by Lehigh Valley Health Network.